Imagine for a second that you can close your eyes, take a deep breath, and, well, actually time travel.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
Right. But you aren't stepping into some metal machine with flashing lights. Instead, the very first thing that hits you is the smell.
Okay, setting the scene.
Yeah, it's this incredibly distinct, sharp scent of cold, salt water. And it's mixing with the heavy, earthy aroma of aged, weathered wood.
That is such a specific vibe.
And then, underneath all of that, you catch the faint, smoky trace of a crackling hearth fire.
I mean, that's an entirely sensory introduction. You're grounded in a very specific time and place before you even open your eyes, which, completely alters how you absorb information.
Exactly. And welcome to today's deep dive, where we are going to explore exactly that kind of sensory time travel. We are unpacking a fantastic travelogue published in February 2026.
Ah, this is the one by the writer Louis, right?
Yes, over at the Substack called Red Solo Traveler. Louis took a trip to the Mystic Seaport Museum in Connecticut.
Such a great spot.
For those of you listening who aren't familiar, this site preserves New England's maritime heritage from an era long, long before the United States was even officially established.
Which is a crucial foundation for everything we're going to discuss today. I mean, we aren't just looking at early American history in a broad, general sense.
Right.
We're examining the specific maritime economy that allowed colonial America to survive, trade, and eventually thrive on a global scale.
So our mission for you today is to uncover how this unique historic village manages to create this fully immersive educational experience. We want to see how it bridges the 1800s with the modern day.
Yes, and by the end of this, we're going to map out the absolute perfect itinerary for a knowledge-hungry traveler like you.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Louis starts his journey not by, walking through the front gates to look at buildings. He actually starts by getting out onto the water.
Which honestly is the most logical starting point for understanding a seaport. Even if it is a bit counterintuitive for a modern tourist who, just parked a car and wants to immediately see the exhibits.
Yeah, Louis points out that the museum sits right on the eastern bank of the Thames River. So he arrives exactly at opening, and at 10:30 a.m., he hops on a 30-minute narrated river cruise.
On the Sabine, right.
Yep, a vessel called the Sabine. He notes that the boat was small and just wonderfully uncrowded. He actually sat on the upper deck with literally only one other person.
Oh, wow. That is rare.
Right. And he was just listening to this young, exceptionally well-informed guide share facts about the docked boats and the harbor itself.
That sounds incredibly peaceful.
It does. And to me, this 10:30 a.m. cruise feels like the establishing shot in a movie. The director gives you the wide, sweeping view of the landscape so you understand the geography before zooming in on the tiny, intricate details of the town.
That's a great analogy.
But I do have to push back just a little bit here. Is a brief 30-minute narrated cruise truly enough time to grasp the historical context? I mean, it seems like it could easily run the risk of feeling like a rushed tourist trap before the quote-unquote real learning begins.
Well, what's fascinating here is that the duration
psychological shift in this. Oh, how so?
Think about it. When you arrive at a museum by car, your brain is in this modern logistical mode. You're focused on parking, finding admission tickets, maybe checking your phone.
Yeah, guilty as charged.
Right. But by stepping onto the Sabine first thing and viewing the port from the water, you force your brain to experience the seaport exactly how a 19th century sailor or an incoming merchant would have actually approached it.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. You're seeing the destination from the exact vantage point it was designed to be seen from.
Exactly. A port town's entire architecture, its layout, its commercial center, it's all oriented toward the water. It turns its face to the sea and not to the inland dirt roads.
Right.
So that 30-minute cruise, it frames the entire economic purpose of the town. You're looking at the docks and the shipyards from the perspective of the people who relied on them for literal survival. It recalibrates your mindset before you even set foot on the cobblestones.
Which suddenly makes stepping off that boat feel entirely different. Once we hit those cobblestone paths, the macro view of the grand maritime economy translates down into the micro view of daily commerce and social life.
This is where you really get into the weeds.
Yeah, and this is where Louis' travelogue gets incredibly colorful. He points out that if you walk through the village, you'll see these vibrant flags hanging outside certain buildings.
And those serve a very specific practical function for the learner.
Right. A vibrant flag means there is a volunteer physically inside that building waiting to talk to you. It's literally exactly like seeing an NPC quest marker floating over a character in a video game.
Ha, yes.
It's this clear visual cue saying, hey, interactive lore is available right here. And here's where it gets really interesting. Louis walks into his first building, the GOH Stone & Co. General Store.
Okay.
And it is packed with 1800 merchandise. He sees tobacco boxes, tin lunch boxes, and this actually blew my mind, rapid washing machines.
Wait, rapid washing machines in the 1800s? Finding those in an old general store highlights that the desire for domestic convenience isn't just some modern invention.
Totally.
I mean, the people living through this era were constantly looking for ways to reduce the grueling, backbreaking physical labor that defined 19th century domestic life.
Yeah. They wanted easier chores just like we do. And the volunteer in the store also walked him through the stark reality of historical inflation.
Always a fun topic.
According to the price list they discussed, one single dollar in the 1800s has the purchasing power of $30 in 2024.
Oh, wow. A 1-to-30 ratio?
A 1-to-30 ratio. That drastically changes how you view a simple tin lunchbox sitting on the shelf. Then Louis heads over to the Druggers and Chemists building.
I imagine that's quite a bit different from today.
Oh, it's a jarring contrast to the brightly lit, sterile pharmacy you or I might visit today to grab a bottle of ibuprofen. The space is filled with old bottles of tonic, and resting right next to them are primitive scalpels.
Oof. Seeing those tools side by side is a really vivid reminder of the sheer vulnerability of the human body back then.
Yeah, it was terrifying.
Well, medicine and maritime life were deeply intertwined. When sailors were out at sea for months, or, when a shipyard worker suffered a severe injury, the solutions were often incredibly brutal and rudimentary.
I feel like the word brutal is almost an understatement when you're staring at an 1800 scalpel. But the most striking sensory detail Louis mentions actually happens in the church and schoolhouse.
Okay.
He walks into the empty church, and there is immersive audio playing behind the visitors. It's a recording of a historical sermon focused on intemperance, basically warning the congregation against the evils of alcohol.
That sets mood.
Louis mentions that if you turn around and look out at the street, it genuinely feels as though the sermon is being preached right behind your back. So I have to ask you, does playing audio of a stern, echoing sermon about intemperance in an otherwise empty wooden church make the history feel more educational, or honestly just a little bit haunting?
It can definitely feel a bit haunting, for sure. But there is a fascinating layer of cognitive psychology at play here that makes it highly educational.
Really?
Yeah. The human brain is actually wired to ignore static information, but to latch onto dynamic environmental cues. A silent room with a static plaque on the wall explaining 19th century religious practices requires active, effortful reading. The brain can, and very often does, easily discard it.
Because it just feels like reading a textbook while standing up.
Exactly. But when the museum introduces auditory stimuli like a booming voice echoing off wooden pews, it triggers a mild startle response. It creates an immediate sense of presence.
Right, you're in the moment.
And the same principle applies to seeing those rusted scalpels at the chemist. These immersive tools force the visitor to confront the harsh realities of the past on a visceral level. It bridges the intellectual gap with an emotional reaction, creating a much more powerful moment of retention.
That makes a lot of sense.
You don't just memorize the fact that they went to church. You momentarily feel the intense social pressure they experienced sitting in those very pews.
You essentially get to experience the guilt trip of the 1800s.
Yeah.
Which perfectly transitions us from the public sphere, the stores, the chemists, the churches, into the private, practical spaces. Because you couldn't just survive on tonics and sermons. You had to survive the elements.
Right.
Louis visits a residential home originally built in the 1600s, with a front section added on later in the 1720s.
So by the time of the 1800s maritime boom we've been discussing, that specific house was already considered an antique by the people living in it.
That's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Generations of people had already lived, worked, and died in that structure long before the clippers even set sail.
Oh.
And you can feel it.
Oh, I bet.
Louis notes the incredibly low ceilings, which were designed to trap heat, and the exceptionally creaky wooden floors upstairs. But the standout detail is the smell.
Back to the sensory experience.
Exactly. There is a constant crackling fire in the hearth. A volunteer is diligently using a heavy hearth pot to make something called rusks, which is essentially the 1800s forerunner to the modern English muffin.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Louis mentions that the smell of the wood smoke wafting through the house was a pleasant aroma for a visit, but he explicitly says he wouldn't want to smell it all the time. Which brings up a pushback I have.
Okay, let's hear it.
When a living history museum has volunteers cheerfully baking delicious Proto-English muffins by a cozy fire, do they run the risk of romanticizing the past a little too much? Like, are they filtering out the true, freezing, back-breaking discomforts of living in a drafty 1720s house?
See, this raises an important question about the role of living history and how it balances engagement with historical accuracy. It is a very delicate line to walk. But if we look closely at the architecture Louis describes next, it proves the museum doesn't ignore those harsh realities at all.
You mean the bank building?
Yes. Louis visits the bank, and he notes it features this massive granite vault and heavy strongboxes. Now, our modern minds immediately assume that thick granite is there solely to deter bank robbers.
Yeah, like a scene from an old Western movie where you expect a guy with a bandana over his face to dynamite the safe.
Right. But the primary purpose of that specific architecture wasn't just to stop theft. The bank was actually designed to be the most fire-resistant building of its era. They didn't build it out of heavy granite primarily to keep bullets out. They built it out of granite to keep the flames out.
Oh, wow. Which suddenly makes that beautiful aged wood we smelled at the beginning feel like a massive liability.
Oh, totally. A single stray spark from one of those cozy hearth fires making rusks could, and frequently did, decimate an entire 1800s community.
Well, it is terrifying.
Because there were no modern fire departments, no pressurized hydrants, a strong wind off the Thames River, and one knocked-over lantern was basically an existential threat to the town's entire economy. So, while the smoke might smell pleasant to a tourist stopping by for 20 minutes today, the architecture of the bank is standing right there, silently communicating the absolute terror of fire that defined their daily lives.
The granite vault isn't just a safe for money. It's a monument to their biggest communal fear.
Exactly.
And to help map out all these interconnected fears and economies, Louis highlights the Mystic River Scale House. Inside, there is a meticulously crafted 1-mile scale model of the river, exactly as it looked between the 1850s and the 1870s.
Oh, I love a good scale model.
It's incredible. It showcases all the winding dirt roads, the shipyards, and the village layout. Louis was really fascinated by how, even though Mystic is a bustling modern town today, many of those original homes depicted in the model still line the actual waterfront.
The scale model functions as an architectural anchor for the learner. It allows you to look down on the town like a bird, comprehend the spatial relationships between the shipyards and the homes, and then walk outside and see those exact same sightlines in the real world.
It's honestly like toggling between the map screen and the gameplay screen in real time.
That's a fun way to put it.
But history isn't just frozen in these restored wooden buildings, right?
Right.
It continuously evolves. Louis' travelogue makes a brilliant pivot here, transitioning from the historical sustenance of hearth-baked rusks and 1800s scale models to the modern exhibition spaces, and eventually the local footprint of the Mystic River Historic District today.
Which is vital. A successful museum can't operate purely as a time capsule. It has to maintain a dialogue with the present. It has to explain how the 1800s port led to the world we navigate now.
Right. Louis notes that alongside the historic village, there are modern museum exhibits that tackle broader, more complex narratives. He specifically points out two. First, an exhibit called Entwined.
Oh, yes.
Which highlights the vital contributions of African and Native indigenous peoples and their cultures to the maritime world.
Such an important part of the story.
And second, an exhibit called From Clippers to Containers, which explores the massive evolution of cargo ships, from the wooden sailing vessels built in places like Mystic to the modern steel behemoths that drive our current global supply chain.
Those exhibits represent a heavy cognitive shift. You go from looking at an individual tin lunchbox in a general store to contemplating the massive intersecting cultural contributions of African and indigenous peoples that shaped the maritime economy.
Yeah, that's huge.
And then you pivot to grasping the sheer scale of modern global logistics.
Processing all of that requires serious mental energy. And speaking of absorbing these massive exhibits like Entwined, Louis highlights a crucial logistical hack for the learner.
Oh, do share.
He actually frames his visit around the concept of timing. He visited on a weekday in early June, what he calls the shoulder season.
Ah, brilliant.
Aside from dodging a few school field trips, he notes the museum was wonderfully uncrowded. He highly recommends that a knowledge-hungry traveler visit during these shoulder seasons, so either late May to late June or September to early October.
Okay, good to know.
He also mentions the logistics are incredibly easy. Parking is abundant and entirely free right across the street. And if you aren't driving, The museum is only a 15-minute walk from the Mystic Amtrak station.
Logistics like taking the train and visiting during the shoulder season are honestly the unsung heroes of a good educational trip. It ties directly back to what we were just saying about cognitive load.
Wait, how does the crowd size dictate your ability to learn about a container ship?
Well, large crowds at tourist destinations severely limit your working memory. When a space is packed, your brain is constantly dedicating background processing power to navigating personal space, filtering out ambient noise, and managing the anxiety of feeling rushed to move along so someone else can see the exhibit.
Oh, I hate that feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, by taking the Amtrak in during the shoulder season, you bypass the stress of peak summer traffic and you reclaim the mental space needed to truly absorb multiple historical perspectives.
That makes total sense.
You have the quiet time to sit with the entwined exhibit and process those diverse narratives, or to ponder the logistical leap from wooden clippers to steel container ships without feeling someone breathing down your neck to take a photograph.
You essentially secure the bandwidth to learn. After utilizing all that bandwidth, though, the brain definitely needs fuel.
Always.
This is where Louis' travelogue steps out of the 1800s museum and fully embraces the modern evolution of the town. He heads into the current Mystic River Historic District, and his first stop is Mystic Pizza.
Oh, like the one from the movie?
Yes, the actual restaurant that inspired the famous 1980s movie located at 56 West Main Street. Louis says you walk in the left side, see the sign proudly declaring a slice of heaven, and you can sit right at the bar. He ordered a Coors Light and was thrilled he could just buy individual slices instead of committing to a whole pie.
Which is a very practical modern convenience for a solo traveler pacing themselves through a long day.
Definitely. The slices are about 10 inches, baked in a personal pan pizza style. He notes the crust is brushed with olive oil, keeping it perfectly crunchy on the bottom but chewy in the middle.
Yeah.
But the best part is what he actually ordered. He went for the special pizza of the day, which was a spaghetti and meatball pizza.
Wait, like actual spaghetti on the pizza?
Literally. Cooked spaghetti baked right into the base alongside the sauce, topped with fresh basil, and meatballs blended seamlessly into the cheese layer.
Wow.
And it was incredibly affordable, too, at just $3 to $4 a slice.
Right.
So what does this all mean? To me, eating a spaghetti and meatball pizza slice at a Rouvy-famous restaurant just steps away from a meticulously preserved 1720s hearth feels like the ultimate modern-day cultural mashup.
It highlights that towns are living, breathing organisms. The Seaport preserves how people lived, suffered, and ate 200 years ago. Mystic Pizza represents the cultural and culinary evolution of the town today.
Yeah.
Neither invalidates the other. They are simply different chapters in the same geographical book, occupying the exact same space.
And Louis certainly wanted to read every culinary chapter he could find. He didn't stop at pizza. Next, he highlights Noble Smokehouse, located at 4 Roosevelt Avenue.
Oh, a smokehouse. Nice.
This is right next to that Amtrak station we mentioned earlier. Famished from miles of walking, he ordered the smokehouse combination. We are talking slow smoked brisket, Texas-style pulled pork, zesty smoked sausage, 2 sides, and a piece of cornbread.
Okay, now I'm hungry.
Plus, he paired it all with a superb old-fashioned cocktail. He specifically praised the brisket, noting the meats were so masterfully smoked they didn't even require much sauce, and the service was wonderfully fast.
Sitting down to high-quality, slow-cooked food provides an essential period of rest and digestion, both literally for the body and intellectually for the mind, after a day of heavy cognitive engagement.
And what better way to cap off that intellectual digestion than with dessert? Louis recommends ending the day by walking the scenic, modern Mystic River Historic District and grabbing a scoop at Mystic Drawbridge ice cream.
Oh, love it.
You literally get to eat your ice cream while standing there, watching the massive mechanical drawbridge lift up to let modern boats pass through the harbor.
Which brings you right back to the river, the very place the journey started on the Sabine.
It's the perfect full circle. So let's wrap this up. We have journeyed from the macro view of an 1800s port floating on the quiet morning waters all the way down to the micro view of the vibrant flags and the jarring reality of primitive chemists' scalpels.
We smelled the wood smoke of baking rusks, stood inside a granite bank built to defy the terror of fire,
Absorbed the complex narratives of the modern exhibits, and then digested it all over a cultural mashup of spaghetti pizza and slow-smoked brisket.
It is a remarkable itinerary that highlights how history isn't just a static subject you read about. It is an environment you navigate.
And for you, the listener, the ultimate takeaway here is the undeniable power of that sensory engagement. When you hear the creak of 1720s floorboards beneath your feet, or you suddenly flinch at the booming audio of a temperance sermon in an empty wooden church, your brain is doing something incredible.
Yeah, it really is.
It is cementing that knowledge faster, deeper, and far more thoroughly than simply scanning the text of a history book. You are internalizing the human experience of the past.
And as you internalize that past, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over on your own.
All right, let's hear it.
We've seen how the Mystic Seaport Museum lovingly preserves the most common, everyday elements of the 1800s, making rusks, washing clothes with rapid machines, utilizing the tools of a general store. Imagine a living history museum built 200 years from right now, in the year 2224, specifically designed to capture our current daily lives.
Oh, wow.
What incredibly mundane everyday object from your life today, or what tedious modern chore, will a volunteer in a historical costume be demonstrating for a crowd of curious time-traveling tourists?
I am just imagining a volunteer in 2224 solemnly trying to explain the historical complexities of untangling a drawer full of old charging cables.
That is painfully accurate.
Right. Well, as you picture that, take one last deep breath of that cold, salt water and aged wood. Thanks for diving deep with us.